All right, let's just jump right in. The entire Harry Potter universe, every single story is built on one simple, unbreakable rule. Muggles cannot know. But for this explainer, we're going to smash that rule. We're going to dig into the very foundation of the wizarding world by asking, what if the biggest secret in history suddenly got out? So let's just put the question right out there. What if tomorrow, you, me, all of us, woke up to the undeniable, in-your-face truth that magic is real? What would actually happen? What would we do? I mean, just think about what that means. We learn about a hidden society of people who can literally edit our reality. They can pluck memories right out of our heads with a flick of a wand. The very first thing to go? Trust. It would just evaporate. And then there's this. They can teleport. Instantly. All of our borders, every security system, every vault, every locked door on the entire planet becomes completely useless. The whole idea of safety, of being secure, it just wouldn't mean anything anymore. But this is the one that changes everything. They have the power to end a life with a single word. No bullet, no poison, no evidence, nothing. From a Muggle point of view, that's not just magic. That is the perfect, untraceable weapon. Now, you have to understand, this separation between our worlds didn't just happen. It's not a coincidence or a cultural thing. The two worlds are living side by side, but they are deliberately kept apart by layers of magic, misdirection, and most importantly, by a very specific law. And at the absolute heart of that separation is this one document, the International Statute of Secrecy. Signed way back in 1692, its goal was crystal clear. Hide magic from Muggles, no matter what it takes. And this wasn't about power or control, it was purely about survival. But to really get why this law was so desperately needed, we have to look back. Because, see, the wizarding world wasn't always hidden. For centuries, wizards and Muggles lived together, more or less. The reason they went into hiding is a really dark but absolutely crucial part of this whole story. And what's so fascinating here, as you can see, it wasn't a sudden thing. It was a slow, painful 400-year breakdown. It started in the 14th century, when that casual familiarity started to turn into suspicion and fear. By the 15th century, that fear blew up into active persecution. And by the 17th, it was so bad, the only choice left was to disappear, which led directly to that statute in 1692. And this quote from Dumbledore just says it all, doesn't it? Imagine a world where a simple act of kindness, like helping your neighbor with their sick animal, was basically signing your own death warrant. That wasn't some far-off threat. It was the everyday, lethal danger that forced an entire society into hiding. Okay, so that's the history. Now let's jump to the present. Let's imagine that tomorrow, for some reason, the Statute of Secrecy completely falls apart. Not announced, no warning. Magic just starts happening all over the world. You know, you can pretty much guess how this would play out. It would happen in 3 stages. First, pure denial. We'd all scream hoax, or that's just some crazy new AI. But then the evidence would just become too much to ignore, and that's step 2, confirmation. Governments and the media would have to admit it's real. And that leads immediately to step 3, fear. The question stops being, is this real, and becomes, how do we protect ourselves from them? And here is the absolute kicker. We know the British Prime Minister is already in on the secret. But that knowledge wouldn't calm anyone down. It would be gasoline on the fire. People would be furious. The first questions would be, you knew? Why didn't you tell us? And what else are you hiding? Every attempt to manage the situation would just look like more lies. So when you have a reality-shattering event like this combined with a total collapse in trust, society doesn't just move forward together. No way. It's splinters. It breaks apart into different groups, each with its own dangerous agenda. At the most basic level, the entire world would split right down the middle along these 2 lines. On one side, you've got hope. People thinking magic can cure cancer, end poverty, fix everything. But on the other side, you have fear. The idea that an uncontrollable power is actually the biggest problem we've ever faced. And pretty much every conflict from that point on would spring from that divide. And those initial feelings would harden into real groups. You'd have the hopeful, who would start by admiring wizards, but then get angry and resentful when they realize magic is a genetic lottery they didn't win. You'd have the obsessed, trying to monetize it, weaponize it, own it. Then the extremists, calling it unnatural or demonic and pushing for violence. And caught right in the middle would be the cautious, most of us probably, just terrified and confused with no idea who to trust. And this is where our little hypothetical future starts to look scarily familiar. Because when you really break down all these modern reactions, you realize none of this is new. We are literally watching the exact same history start to play out all over again. Okay, so let's rewind for a second. Back in the 15th century, what happened? Fear of an uncontrollable power took over, and that fear escalated directly into witch hunts, persecution, and violence. Now, look at our modern scenario. The extremists preaching hate, the cautious majority wanting to contain the threat, it is the exact same pattern. A modern anti-magic movement would absolutely form, and it would be fueled by the very same primal fear that drove those witch hunts centuries ago. And this is what it all boils down to. Despite all our science, our progress, our technology, the fundamental questions we would ask today are identical to the ones people asked in the 1400s. Why do they get this power and not us? How can we possibly trust them? And how do we keep ourselves safe? The human instinct to control or destroy what we don't understand, it hasn't changed at all. So this is the real takeaway, the thing that reframes the entire series. The Statute of Secrecy wasn't just some rule to keep wizards hidden. It was a lesson learned over 400 years of violence and bloodshed. It was a painful acceptance that the first time they tried to live together, it ended in disaster. And without that wall of secrecy, the second time was doomed to end in the exact same fiery, destructive way. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. Was the Statute of Secrecy really an oppressive law designed to keep two worlds apart? Or was it something else entirely? A tragic but necessary lesson to prevent a war that, both then and now, seems completely and utterly inevitable.